Hello, everyone. Hi, there's my camera where I'm supposed to be looking. It is so wonderful to have you join us today. We are launching off this mental health summit during May for Mental Health Month with a dear friend of mine, Grace Smith. She is a hypnotherapist, works with major high profile executives across the world, has worked with many celebrities, and also with the lay people like me of the world. I think Bridget, our producer and head of content, has shared on MedCircle before that out of all the therapy she has gone to, out of all the medications she has been on, out of all the self-help books she's read, meditation she's done, blah, 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 hypnotherapy was the life-changing component to her life. And I am so amped for you to learn about this from the expert herself, Grace. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kyle. It's so exciting to be back on MedCircle.
Let's get the misconceptions of hypnosis and hypnotherapy out of the way. What is this not?
It is not mind control. So if hypnosis were mind control, I always say people would just bring me their significant other and a checklist and I'd already be a billionaire.
Okay. Yeah.
So hypnosis is so much not mind control that I can't even get somebody to pick up their socks if they don't want to. So it's not mind control. There's no blackout state. There's no amnesia. All that stuff from Hollywood and stage show antics are merely for entertainment purposes. You want me to get into a little bit as to how the stage show stuff works, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I was hypnotized my freshman year in college on stage, and it was a compelling experience, certainly, but I looked like a fool.
Awesome. Well, what did they have you do?
Oh, I was competing in a dance competition on MTV. I had bugs all over my body. I was really hot. I was really cold. And what was really interesting is the guy, the hypnotist, said, once you cross this line, you're going to go right back to your quote normal state. And so I crossed the line and I went back to my normal state. And even in that moment, I thought, did I do that because I wanted to do it? Did I do that to not embarrass myself? Did I do it because I wanted to have the show go on, or was I out of control? It was a really surreal moment.
Interesting. Do you remember if there's anything he asked you to do that you didn't do, out of curiosity?
I don't think, this was a long time ago, I don't think so. And there were, 20 of us on stage. And by the end of it, there were 4 of us. So clearly He was choosing the ones who were willing to go along with this.
Perfect. Okay, so that's exactly right. In the stage show setting, what happens is the hypnotist will first give a suggestion to the entire audience. Typically, it's something like bite into a lemon. And so the hypnotist and their assistant is watching the entire audience to see who just sits there like this, who begrudgingly pretends like they're holding a lemon, and who is holding the lemon, smelling the lemon. And when they bite into the lemon, they can taste all the bitterness. And so then when they ask for volunteers, and they do ask for volunteers, they never bring anybody up against their will. They've already sussed out who's playing along. So then they bring people up on the stage and they start with some very benign, simple suggestions, like there's bugs all over you and people are kind of going like this, or you're playing an instrument in a band. And then as the show gets raunchier and all of a sudden people don't want to participate in the suggestions anymore, they don't want to shake their booty in front of all of their colleagues, all of a sudden people aren't participating. But how could that possibly be if it were mind control and if the person had no say in the matter? And just as you said, Kyle, as the show progresses, they remove people from the stage who aren't participating. So by the end of the show, you've got the 1 or 2 people left who actively want to absorb every suggestion. Now, all of that having been said, hypnotherapy does take place at the theta brainwave state. And the theta brainwave state is where we primarily live under the age of 7 years old. So 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 4-year-olds, they haven't developed the conscious mind yet, which are the alpha and beta brainwave states. So in theta, you do have less inhibition. You are more creative and you are more connected to your intuition. So if you've ever seen a 5-year-old and their favorite song comes on in the middle of the grocery store, they're boogieing down and having a great time and they could care less that people are watching. A 12-year-old would not behave the same way. They're operating in beta. So while you are not being controlled, while you absolutely have free will, your inhibitions are slightly lessened during the stage hypnosis experience, which is very cool in the therapeutic setting to apply that same mechanism there.
We're going to talk about how we can identify some of our subconscious beliefs and ways to potentially break through them, either through what we can do or through the power of hypnotherapy. But for now, what types of things do you find clients coming to you where hypnotherapy is a really big success?
Great question. The truth is, it kind of comes down to whatever we're talking about the most. Meaning, when I first launched my hypnotherapy business about 10 years ago, I did so with a Living Social campaign, which is like Groupon. And in the Living Social campaign, I said, use hypnotherapy to help you sleep at night, lose the weight you haven't been able to lose, and overcome anxiety. So for an entire year, I helped people sleep, lose weight, and overcome anxiety, because that's
right. And y'all, she's told me this story before. She had like a gazillion people sign up for this thing. So literally all year she was like, oh my gosh, well, I guess I'm in business. Here I go.
8 or 9 sessions a day, every day, 7 days a week for a year. It was over 1,000 sessions.
You need some hypnotherapy after that.
Oh yes, I did. So ultimately, what we have found is if we put out, okay, use hypnotherapy for peak performance, use hypnotherapy to overcome nail biting or overcome fear of flying, that's who comes to us. And what this indicates is that people are not searching for hypnotherapy in general. Very few people in the world are just Googling, what is hypnotherapy? Most people are Googling, how do I overcome my addiction to XYZ? How do I break through this thing? And then they try everything, see a little bit of success or no success at all, and finally go, you know what? This thing is popping up. Let me try hypnosis. I don't necessarily think it's going to work. And then ultimately, it tends to be the one thing that does.
Grace and Dr. Ramani, one of our MedCircle doctors and clinical psychologists, have a great series on MedCircle, very in-depth, where we both get the perspective of a hypnotherapist and a clinical psychologist on how it affects our subconscious beliefs. I was at the time, I was like, I don't know if Dr. Ramani is going to be like, yeah, do hypnotherapy, because you just never know where people stand on, newer types of therapies that are still finding their way into mainstream. And she goes, oh, well, it's my number one recommendation for my clients who want to quit smoking. And I was like, really? Before anything else? She goes, it's because it's what works. Dr. Ramani is just what works. And then we're going to do that. She is evidence-based, science-backed all the way, as I know you are too, Grace. And this works for people who have the desire to want to start or stop something, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And then also for smoking, the studies are just overwhelmingly prove that this has a 96 or 97% efficacy rate. I want to go back to the theta point. And by the way, right now, only during the month of May, you can get MedCircle for an entire month for free, not just the rest of this month. Just sign up and your next month is completely free. There's no obligation. It's what we're doing for Mental Health Month. If you're watching this live and you're like, what are you talking about? I thought you were just a YouTube channel. We pulled our YouTube channel and 73% of them didn't realize we have a membership outside of YouTube. So go to medcircle.com. You're going to see what we really do, how we can really change your life, and you can get started for free this month only. Grace, Gwen from the chat, hi Gwen, asks, is the theta stage where artists get their flow?
Great question, Gwen. Yes, and when you're in the shower and you get those great light bulb moments, so you're doing something rote, something you've done a million times, you don't have to actively think about shampooing, and you're relaxed, you're in what's called the alpha brainwave state, which is essentially a daydreaming state. Artists do tend to get hits of inspiration already when they're in the alpha state. Actually, everybody does, but artists even more so, because I think they're on the lookout for them more so than probably most folks. But the theta brainwave state is flow state. It is the peak performance state. It is where you are wonderfully, deeply relaxed, feeling perfectly safe, and yet you are highly, incredibly focused on one thing. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful place for artists to go, entrepreneurs to go, engineers to go. There's stories about Thomas Edison using it when he was creating his inventions. Yeah, it's a place where all of your intuition and your ingenuity can finally reach you without the conscious mind going, oh, that's a terrible idea, or that'll never work, or 10 million people have tried that before. Why would you be the one to be able to do it? All that goes away and you can just create.
I have been hypnotized by Grace a few times, and I can tell you, and look, I wouldn't have Grace on here unless I believed in this. Okay. So I'm coming from a very honest place. You feel the changes. Even after one session, I felt the changes. And then more compelling is I saw my behavioral changes in the following days and the following weeks. It is such a compelling therapy. And Grace's mission, as she says, is to make hypnosis mainstream. And she's doing it. And I can't wait until it's even more mainstream, because this really is the power to end, in so many ways, needless suffering. We talk about these subconscious blocks, Grace. What are some of our biggest subconscious blocks? What are you seeing in your practice?
Fear. Always based on fear. Yes. So the subconscious mind, its one role, its one job is to keep us alive. That's its whole thing. So every belief that it develops, it thinks is in the service of keeping us alive and safe. But the default setting and the default understanding of what is safe means small and hidden and doing the same thing we've always done. Something new, even if it's actually better for us. For example, not smoking versus smoking. If we've been a smoker for 10 years, the subconscious is like, well, your heart's still beating, you're still alive. Let's not change anything, because that's the whole goal. Yeah. So anything that would expose us, so public speaking or having a platform or being famous or asking for the bigger job at work where you'd have more employees and greater responsibility, all that stuff is a huge no-no to the subconscious by default. Like I said, anything brand new and anything that when we were being raised goes outside of the core beliefs from the people who trained our subconscious brain. So typically that's our parents. It can also be older siblings. It can be the church in town. It can be the principal at the little school. But ultimately, from the age of 7 and under, the primary people who were teaching you what it means to be a human, when you want to start doing things outside of the bounds of what that included, the subconscious, it's a no-go. And that's where all self-sabotage comes from. The conscious mind goes, I want to run a 5K. The subconscious goes, sit on the couch and eat a Snickers, please.
Yes.
Because that's what we've always done. So when the conscious mind wants to do something new and the subconscious doesn't want to, the subconscious will always win unless you go in and actively reprogram it, which is what hypnotherapy does.
Well, and for me, that's so frustrating, because by the nature of the term subconscious, I shouldn't be consciously aware of that. I sit on the couch and start eating, not by choice, but I go and put on my shoes and start running by choice. Are you saying that in the hypnotherapy state or through hypnotherapy, we can go and create a new subconscious so that more subconsciously we're finding ourselves running or doing the things we want or we know we should be doing, rather than indulging in these sometimes destructive behaviors?
Absolutely. So here's an example that comes to mind. Let's say someone's got an issue with someone at the office, and let's say we're actually still going into a physical office space and having to interact with this person every single day. And they just drive you nuts, and you feel like they are really disrupting the workplace, and it's like nails on a chalkboard every time you interact with them. And you do a hypnotherapy session around whatever it needs to be. Potentially, they remind you of someone who was cruel to you when you were 6, or they said something that flared up an experience you had when you were 12. And none of these things are on your conscious mind. You just think you don't like this person. And by healing that, all of a sudden you go into the office the next day and you don't even notice the person. It's like they don't even register. And so the person will come for their next hypnotherapy session. It's like, how is your progress? And it's like, I didn't even think about her. I didn't even notice her. And then when we were in a meeting together, she was talking and I realized I'd been taking notes and it didn't even register to me that it was her speaking. So all of that disruption, all of that subconscious angst and the difficulty between the conscious mind wanting to feel great at the workplace and the subconscious really having a problem with this person dissolves. And it's incredibly subtle, because the absence of a problem is subtle. A problem is not subtle, but the absence of it very much is. And so we kind of have to look retroactively to notice just how far we've come with hypnosis.
I told you before we started I was excited to talk to you, and I still am learning stuff from you no matter how many times we meet. This is so good. I want to link below this video on YouTube to your series with Dr. Ramani. So if we can link to that, go watch that series, y'all. And you can watch it for free when you start a trial. But that series, it really gives you a comprehensive understanding of what we're talking about today, and also provides some next steps. Grace, in the chat, people are asking, is hypnotherapy confidential?
Great question. So hypnotherapy is not yet regulated, meaning every single state in the United States, every single province in Canada, every single whatever else, everywhere else, jurisdiction has their own rules and laws about hypnotherapy. It is becoming more regulated, but is not yet, at least in the United States, regulated on a national level.
So could I just open up a shop here in Arizona and say, hey, I'm offering hypnotherapy. Like, I read a book on how to do it. Come in and pay me.
Luckily, it's not that bad any longer.
Okay.
But so I'm not exactly sure what it is in Arizona right now, but for example, in New Jersey, you can't call yourself a hypnotherapist unless you're also a licensed mental health practitioner. So if you have a degree in social work or you're a psychologist, you can call yourself a hypnotherapist. But if you just have a hypnotherapy certification, no matter how robust, you have to call yourself either hypnotist or hypno coach. And I used to find that problematic. I don't so much anymore. I feel like from a marketing perspective, again, people don't really care. They just want to get over their problem. And so what I really advise everyone to do is make sure that whomever you're working with, whether the state requires them to call themselves a hypnotherapist, hypnocoach, hypnotist, or anything else, that they are in fact a certified hypnotherapist through a reputable governing board like the International Association of Counselors and Therapists, which is where I am registered and where all of my students are. And for that reason, to answer the question, not all practices are equal, because some people can go to a 2-day conference and then throw up a shingle and call themselves a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist, depending on the state. So that person would not have a whole lot, I wouldn't imagine, of understanding around HIPAA compliance or confidentiality. And you would really want to make sure that it's in their terms of services if that's important to you. Yeah, so you've got to do a little bit of homework to make sure that it's confidential. By far and large, most hypnotherapists understand the grave importance of that, but it is not legally regulated in the way that it is with, say, psychotherapy.
One component of hypnotherapy I adore is the effectiveness it still has when you conduct hypnotherapy sessions over the phone or virtually. I'm a big fan of any type of therapy you can get. And if that's telehealth therapy, great. We have a shortage, so we can't really be picky on how we're getting our therapy. However, I personally prefer to see my therapist in person, because so much of what I will inadvertently communicate is going to be done through body language. And if they only see this, I don't feel like they're going to get my full story, no matter how thorough I am. With hypnotherapy, though, I can just use my phone, call Grace, and it's going to have the same results, or at least should, than if we were meeting in person. How is that possible, Grace? And did I just misspeak on anything?
Nope, that was perfect. So I found this out by mistake. When I first launched my business, I was in New York City. I had an office genuinely the size of a closet in Union Square. And I asked a couple of my clients who still work with me today, how could you even put up with that place? And I've heard a couple of times, Grace, you were the only one with your eyes open. Like, you're the only one who had to look at the closet office. Everybody else was fine with
yeah.
Because their eyes were closed the whole time. They're like, I just came in and took basically a nap. Not actually a nap, but you know what I mean.
No, yeah, for sure.
That goes to show the very humble beginnings of my first practice. And so people would come in very, very anxious and stressed out. It's New York City. The subways were always late. People were running late with their meetings. People would jostle them on the street and pour coffee all over them. I mean, these things happened all the time. So people inadvertently always would show up a couple of minutes late, and then we'd have to spend quite some time getting them relaxed into the theta brainwave state. They would be in this beautiful theta brainwave state, and then they would go right back out to the chaos, and they'd be straight back into beta. So ultimately, over time, I would have clients say, Grace, I'm headed to Singapore for 2 weeks. I don't want to miss our sessions. Can we do them over? Then we were primarily using Skype. Sure. I've got a little bit of a cold. It's not that big of a deal, but I just don't want to come in, but I don't want to miss our session. Can we do it over the phone? Sure. And what I found was people who I was so used to seeing extremely stressed out when the session first began. I mean, they showed up so relaxed. They had just eaten dinner. They were doing a little bit of journaling beforehand. Some of them had just taken a bubble bath. And so the length of time that it took to get into the theta state was decreased. And then when the session was over, the length of time that they were in the theta state was increased. So the amount of time they were in that wonderful, safe, healing state was extended, and therefore the results amplified. And when I realized that, I looked at my closet-sized office that cost a fortune, and I said, okay, forget this. Because exactly, everybody is getting better faster, and I don't need to have New York City office space. And so it's been basically since I think 2014 that I have been entirely over Skype, Zoom, phone. And so when the pandemic hit, luckily our company was already set up to be able to serve people all over the world. Yeah. And we felt very fortunate. Yeah.
How long do the effects of hypnotherapy last? This person's asking, if I quit smoking through hypnosis, will I want to smoke again down the line?
Great question. It depends. It's not magic. So
it feels like magic, though. This is what the issue is. You just said it's not magic, but when I describe it to people, you would think it is magic because that's what it felt like to me. So what do you mean by that? It's not magic, but it kind of is magic.
Absolutely. It very much feels magical, but it's not magic in the sense that I assume people view magic as being something like there is a wizard with power and they wave their wand and now your problem's gone and it's forever gone. The hypnotherapist has no power. As we mentioned at the top of the hour, there is no mind control. You're the one with all of the power. Hypnotherapist, the way I really view it is we are expert guides with a really bright lantern, and we help bring you down into your subconscious, and then we hold up the lantern. Hey, you want to look over here? You want to look over here, and then you do all the transformation work.
Good metaphor. Yeah.
So what's actually happening, even though it feels magical, is we are really creating a new neurological network in your brain. So I don't know about anybody listening, but if somebody asked me to do a trigonometry equation for $1 million, I don't know that I could do it. But I got A's in trig in high school. I haven't used it, so I lost it, right? You don't use it, you lose it. Anyone who's attempted to learn a new language and then didn't live in that place has experienced this firsthand, right? So if you put up, let's say, orange road cones in front of the neural pathways of anxiety, and instead you start using hypnotherapy to create a new neural pathway in your brain of calm confidence, and every single day with conditioning, you strengthen the neural pathway in your brain for calm confidence. It's not just that you're strengthening that pathway, it's that you're not using the anxiety pathway as often, and it starts to break down. So it's very rapid, it's incredibly effective, but instead of it being someone waving a wand and now everybody's cured, you are actively conditioning new pathways in your brain based on how you want to feel and how you want to behave instead of the old default that you essentially learned under the age of 7. So when it comes to smoking, how long does it last? It can last a lifetime. And if you have 4 sessions to quit smoking, all the cravings are gone, you don't want to smoke, and 6 months later you go to your cousin's wedding and get blackout drunk and someone hands you a cigarette, chances are the addiction comes back up. The good news is you'd likely only need a session or 2 to get back where you were. I remember I had a colleague when I worked at a Silicon Valley startup, and I just started learning hypnotherapy as a side gig at the time. And he said to me, hypnosis didn't work. I tried it for smoking. And I said, oh, really? I never hear that. Tell me what happened. He said, yeah, I smoked a pack a day for 9 years, had 1 hypnosis session, didn't smoke at all for an entire year.
So it did work.
Exactly. But then I got drunk at a party, smoked a cigarette, and started smoking again. So it didn't work. And it's like, wow, the movies and stage show hypnotists have done us such a disservice that someone would go, Nothing I tried for 9 years worked. I did one session, didn't smoke for a year. All that healing that happened for a year to my bank account and my lungs and my fingers
Mhm.
and everything. But then I got into a state that is non-hypnotizable. Someone who's blackout drunk, you're not in the beta brainwave state, alpha, theta, or delta. We're in reptilian no man's land, and that can't be hypnotized. You can't access that. And someone were to smoke again, and then they go, oh, it didn't work. It absolutely did work. Just the conditioning was broken.
Uh-huh.
And do another session or two, and the conditioning will come back. So one more example that I think might be helpful, because there's actually far fewer smokers today than there were when I first started, which is great news. This might be more applicable. I had a client who said they used hypnosis to very effectively overcome fear of flying. But then when 9/11 happened, it came back with a vengeance, which makes absolute sense. When we go through something that traumatic, it's very understandable that the subconscious would awaken old coping mechanisms and fear-based mechanisms. The good news is it doesn't have to last, because you already know hypnotherapy does work, and you can
Mhm.
get back to the state where you were feeling comfortable and safe flying much more rapidly than the first time around. So I just want to really empower everyone to have the amount of sessions you genuinely need to get to where you want to be. It's going to be much faster than you think. It'll definitely take less than 3 months, whatever it is you're working on. But if for some reason you need a pick me up session or two down the line, have it. Just have it.
So
You'll get right back.
I hear all that. Allow me to play devil's advocate, because those are extreme examples. Okay, I got blackout drunk at a wedding. I picked up a cigarette. We have an international, tragedy on 9/11, so I'm scared of flying again. I'm just talking about, I did 6 sessions with a hypnotherapist. I'm not smoking, but in 4 months, if I see somebody smoking or if I smell that cigarette, am I going to be like, oh God, I got to go get my hands on a cigarette? You're shaking your head no.
No. I've never seen that happen ever.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that is the power, because when big things happen, at some point we have to have our own resilience and self-control, because big things happen. But for the day-to-day triggers that we fall victim to, those are the ones that I want to overcome, those day-to-day triggers. Yeah.
Yeah, the only two scenarios I've seen where people don't get the results they're looking for is because A, they didn't actually want the result to begin with.
Yeah.
Meaning
True.
someone will go, oh, you know what? Hypnotize me to never eat sugar again. That'll be so great. And it's like, do you want very, very, very badly to never eat sugar again? And they're like, no, I love sugar, but just hypnotize me. That goes to show, again, they think it's mind control and I can make someone do something they don't want to do, which I very much cannot. So on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being you want it more than anything in the world, hypnotherapy only starts to become effective at a 7 or above. And the more you want that thing, the faster you're going to see those results. Number 2 is you don't have the amount of sessions required in the first place. So if somebody goes, I really want to overcome my fear of public speaking, and they have 3 sessions and maybe they get 30% better, but they stop, it's very much likely that it will come back. So you want to get to at least 90% of where you want to be before you stop your sessions. And then the likelihood of, relapsing or having it go back is very, very, very unlikely.
Sure. MedCircle is a mental health education platform. So let's dive into a little more, something more directly related to mental health. For somebody, and this is a tricky area, okay, because I can already hear people going, why are you saying that they should do this? For somebody struggling with major depressive disorder, major anxiety, maybe they've been diagnosed with some emotional dysregulation as well. Or you can't be diagnosed with that, but that's coming up in therapy. Does hypnotherapy have a place, in your opinion, on addressing these actual mental health issues listed in the DSM?
So as a hypnotherapist, we don't diagnose, we don't treat disorders. Obviously, we're not prescribing medication. That's not at all what our education is about. And so for someone who has been diagnosed with a disorder, we absolutely always want to work in tandem with a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist, because they are the professionals and they know what's going on. As a alternative, what's the word? in tandem, right? So working in partnership with a licensed mental health professional, absolutely hypnotherapy is beneficial in any area except for a diagnosis of schizophrenia. That is the only contraindication to hypnotherapy. Now, what I have found, I don't know that there are any other studies to back this up, but from my personal experience with a major depressive disorder, typically, sometimes one of the things that clients will experience is a lack of desire to work on overcoming the challenges that they experience because there's such a lack of energy. I know, for example, when I had severe postpartum depression after my son was born, I couldn't do hypnosis. I couldn't get myself to do it.
Now,
And
when
I
you
think
mean
there was
do
a
it for
lot of that.
yourself or do it for others?
Oh, I could do it for others. I could
Okay.
absolutely get up and be the hypnotherapist. I couldn't listen to hypnotherapy myself.
Wow.
And I think there's some extra layers because for me, it's my whole world. And
Yes.
what came with my postpartum depression was so much shame and guilt, and I'm failing and total lack of confidence. And so listening to hypnosis to me also included, like, I didn't send that email, it was very much wrapped in. But I have heard some of my other clients who go through different, ebbs and flows with their depressive disorders, that at certain times there just isn't the energy. If they want to get better, they absolutely want to, but the energy isn't there to actually pick up the phone and do the work. And so for that reason, we don't actually see very many clients coming through with major depressive disorders.
Yeah.
We do see almost everyone coming in the door saying that they have high anxiety. And I think the pandemic lends itself to that because that wasn't the case prior to the pandemic. We'd always have people saying they want some stress relief, but people coming in and saying my anxiety is at an all-time high was just consistent across the board over the last year. And hypnotherapy is very, very effective in helping to bring those high levels of anxiety down. So I really do want to be clear in saying I'm not stating that anyone with a depressive disorder doesn't want to get better. That's not the case.
I get that.
Sometimes the energy isn't there to do the work.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the work requires a lot of energy. In the middle of depression, you might not have enough energy to make a sandwich. So I can't imagine, going to the depths of your subconscious.
Right.
I'm going to take a question from our YouTube audience, but if you're a MedCircle member and you've signed and you're watching this on our live Zoom, put some Q&As in that chat and I will get to those questions as well. If you're not a MedCircle member, which is separate than our YouTube channel, go to medcircle.com or visit the links below this video. Is my sound coming in okay? I hear a lot of clicking.
Sound great to me.
Can you hear me okay, Grace? Okay, good.
Oh, yeah.
You can join MedCircle and get access to our video streaming service. There's more than 500 videos, interviews with psychologists, psychiatrists, people like Grace Smith, patients. It's a very valuable resource. And you will have access to all of our weekly live classes where you can get your questions answered from the same professionals that you watched in our videos. It's not treatment, it's education. Let's go to this question from YouTube saying, my aunt quit smoking after 50 years thanks to hypnosis. Did 2 follow-up sessions and never smoked again. There you go. There's some proof. Another person is asking, what about people that experience dissociation and complex post-traumatic stress disorder along with depression and anxiety? Would hypnotherapy work, Grace?
Again, because it's not really my wheelhouse to know the specifics about lots of different disorders, I will say that hypnotherapy can be effective for everyone who doesn't have a schizophrenia diagnosis. The reason being, hypnotherapy allows you, let's say, for example, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Hypnotherapy has been proven time and time again, especially with PTSD as related to wartime or veterans, to allow this person to go back to the traumatic experience and visualize it from a distance. Now, not all hypnotherapy requires going back to a traumatic event and reliving it or even observing it from a distance, although some of it does. And it's very healing and very cathartic to be able to go back to this traumatic experience, watch it from a distance, and then do something called reframing. And be able to experience the traumatic event in a way that ends up being empowering to the subconscious mind. The conscious mind always knows what happens. It doesn't change anything, but the subconscious relationship to the experience can completely transform.
I so get that.
Yeah.
I so get that. Continue. Sorry.
Let me give a little example, one that's not really based in what we would call a trauma, but for a 6-year-old very much was. So this is something I share in my first book. The story is shared with permission, even though I'll keep her anonymous. So I had a client come to me who was biting her nails to the point where they were bleeding. And she thought it had to do with stress at work, which makes sense. She had a very stressful job. So we go into hypnotherapy. We say, go to the source of the nail biting. We don't know that this is historically accurate. This is the subconscious perceived root cause of the issue. So we don't want to take it as, hand on the Bible, 100%, this is the moment it started. But this is what the subconscious believes was the initial sensitizing event. All of a sudden, she sees herself, she's 6 years old, and their little desks are all in a little square, and the little girl next to her keeps whispering to her, even though it's quiet time and they're all supposed to be coloring. And she goes, be quiet, we're not supposed to be talking. Be quiet, we're not supposed to be talking. Finally, she goes, be quiet. And the teacher comes over and chastises, who's now my client, as the little girl, and then holds up her drawing. It's kind of like got the teacher's attention, holds up the drawing and says, you're coloring outside of the lines. This is what you're not supposed to do, and tapes it to the chalkboard for the whole class to see.
Dang, Mrs. Miller. Good.
Exactly. She's mortified. And then underneath the desk, she's starting to pick at her cuticles. So her little 6-year-old body doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to handle this amount of ridicule and anxiety. And it's just horrific for her little self. So one form of reframing would be to imagine that my client today from the year 2021 is in that classroom, goes back there with her, so that when the little girl next to her is making some noise, the adult her can come over and say, excuse me, it's not time to talk. And then the adult her can say, hey, have you ever heard of Jackson Pollock or Basquiat? Your painting, your drawing is gorgeous. It's amazing. You're an impressionist. I love it. Yeah. And then with fresh eyes from the adult from 2021, looking at the teacher, she goes, oh, she's so tired. She's so old. She's like
I just got
years
chills
away from retiring, right? These little kids are running around and giving her such a hard time all day long. She's so tired. She looks so sad. And now all of a sudden she has compassion for this woman that the subconscious believed up until a moment prior was this like evil, heinous, wicked witch. Mm-hmm. And so the conscious mind still knows for sure what actually happened in that story. But instead of feeling embarrassed, ashamed, like she's a bad little girl, like the teacher's evil, like the little girl next to her ruined everything, that she's a horrible artist and is, picking at her nails and starts to bite her nails as a result, she's empowered. She's like, I'm an amazing artist. That little girl got handled. I feel so bad for that teacher. And most importantly, she never started picking her nails in the first place. So then like a domino effect, it comes all the way up to the present moment as if that issue had never actually began. That's how the subconscious treats it. And then it either just happens that it stops on its own accord, or with another session or two, it becomes that much easier. So that's what reframing is like.
Is this what you would consider part of inner child work?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Most of hypnotherapy includes inner child work because we were formed essentially under the age of 7.
So Dr. Judy Ho, who is a triple board certified forensic and neuropsychologist and one of our doctors of the MedCircle doctors, is working with our production team to do a series or a live class on inner child work. And I think having you come on as an additional perspective for that would be really impactful, because it's so great to hear. I love hearing the science, from Dr. Judy and all of that. And then I love hearing this more, it sounds more poetic to me, but that story is so relatable. I can understand it in a different way. So hopefully we could have you two collaborate on that, because
I'd love that.
It's something that I'm sitting here going, why are we not doing more inner child or any inner child stuff? We don't have anything at the moment, but we're bringing it to you. So we are going to bring that to our MedCircle members. Again, it's my job right now to be promoting MedCircle. It's Mental Health Month, and I'm trying to get people to understand that we have so much more than just this YouTube channel. So I typically do not have so many call to actions in our interviews. But I'm really trying to encourage our YouTube audience, who is with us, so committed. You guys, I read all your comments. You're on all our videos. this is just a fraction of what I can offer you is our YouTube channel. It's a lot. I mean, you see our YouTube channel, it's a lot, and it's just a fraction of what's available to you. Go all in. You deserve it this month, especially with the biggest promotion, the biggest offering we've ever done. I don't want anything keeping you from getting the mental health education you need, either for yourself or for somebody else. If there is something that I can do that's keeping you from getting this education, email me directly, Kyle@MedCircle.com, and I will take care of it. If I can, I will take care of it. Okay, so Grace, let's go to another question. EMDR. Well, this person said EDMR, but I'm assuming they mean EMDR. If I'm wrong, let me know. But is EMDR related or similar to hypnosis in terms of rewiring the brain? Grace, I think you've mentioned EMDR in the past. Can you speak to this?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not, again, a specialist in EMDR, but
Sure.
Here's my understanding. So when we're in the theta brainwave state, sometimes a sign of having achieved that state is rapid eye movement under the lids, just like when we're in REM sleep, when we have our really active dream state. So EMDR utilizes that same functionality, to my understanding, to get to the theta brainwave state, to get to the subconscious so that things can be healed. I've done EMDR as a client, as a patient, and the way that I would explain the differences personally between that and a hypnotherapy session are that it doesn't feel quite as much like a story. It feels more fragmented. Like, here's a piece, now focus on that emotion, and it kind of gets washed away, right? Focus on this, and then it kind of gets washed away. So I definitely see value in it. I think that everybody needs to be the purveyor of their own truth and find out what works for them, and test out what resonates with you most. For me, having the full picture and understanding why my subconscious believed something the way that it did, communicating with it what I want it to do instead, and then visualizing it doing it that way, which is called future pacing, feels more powerful to me. But if EMDR works for you, go for it. And it is my understanding that it accesses the subconscious.
Oh yeah, and I have the same type of passionate feedback I hear from people who try hypnotherapy. I hear the exact same passion for those who try EMDR. It is a life-changing therapy for so many. It is critical, though, that, and I should have mentioned this earlier, that as lay people out there, as patients, that we are finding the right professional. There are so many people who list EMDR or whatever it may be on their website, and it's because they did it once with one client 12 years ago. That may not be the best person for you. Even when Grace was speaking about what a hypnotherapist does and does not do. If you find a hypnotherapist who goes, "Oh, you have depression? Okay, come into my office. I'm going to clean up your depression in 2 seconds." That might be a flag where you go, whoa. This isn't what the standard should be. You are in charge. I'm not talking to Grace here. I'm talking to you, the viewer. You are in charge. You are in charge. Remember that. You get to call the shots. You get to hire. You get to fire. You get to ask questions. You call the shots, because this is literally about you. This is be selfish, okay? And if you're there for a spouse or a child or a friend, it is the same type of selfishness. You're advocating for them in the same way you would advocate for yourself. Never forget, you are in charge here. You have a wonderful app, Grace. And before I say, go to our link in bio and download Grace's app, who should be downloading your app? Like, what are the common things that you hear people coming to you and you go, man, my app would be great for you for this?
There's a section on our app where it's called Build a Custom Session, and it asks, how do you want to feel? And the dropdown includes worthy, happy, peaceful, healthy. That's my favorite section of the app. We have hundreds.
Can I do all of the above?
Yeah, exactly. And then you get to pick how long you want your session to be, 12 minutes, 22, or 42. You get to choose if you want to listen to rain or waves or ethereal music or nothing. And I find that that section of the app is really powerful because at the end of the day, the way my sort of grace method of hypnotherapy views our subconscious and the manifestations of our beliefs like a tree. So if you think of the limbs, those are the physical manifestations of an issue. They're the things we can see. So that would be binge eating, nail biting, yelling at a loved one when it's the last thing we want to do, acting out in all sorts of ways. The trunk is stress and anxiety. So if stress and anxiety goes down, the limbs aren't as activated. It's like if we went on vacation for a month with absolutely no internet connection and just slept on a beach and read our favorite novel all day. We would start to believe we had absolutely no issues, right? All of the limbs would become phantom limbs. It's like, oh, I'm just perfect now. And then the minute we come back to the real world and open up the email inbox, it's like, ah. Yep. So just hacking off a limb isn't going to do us much good because let's say we stop smoking over here, we could grow a limb for sex addiction over here. I'm not saying it's necessarily that concrete, but it's very likely that if you're just hacking off a limb and you haven't worked at the root, it's going to grow in a different form. So just decreasing stress and anxiety helps a lot to decrease the activation of the limbs, but it's still not the whole picture. If we want to heal the root cause so that no new limbs grow and so that stress and anxiety stay low, we're always working on one of three things: lack of self-love, lack of self-worth, lack of self-confidence. And to be totally truthful, lack of self-worth and lack of self-love are still kind of embedded in lack of self-love, but most people can't go straight to lack of self-love. We got to start somewhere else. Typically, lack of self-confidence is a great place to start. So that section of the app is so powerful because if you do a session on feeling worthy for 22 minutes, so many of your other limbs aren't going to get activated, especially the few minutes after the session. But with enough repetition, remember, you're creating that new neural pathway and you're not using the other ones and they start to break down. So we've got everything under the sun, hypnosis for fertility and birth and grieving and nail biting and everything you can imagine. But I think if you got one place you want to go, one place you want to start, a session on feeling worthy, everybody can use that.
Use the links below to get that app, or what is the website again, Grace, where they can go?
Getgrace.com.
Getgrace.com. Make it easy for me. Thank you. Now, I've got to stop saying y'all. It's really bad. Call me out on that. The more you bully me in the comments for saying the more likely I will be to stop.
We'll do a hypnosis session
I just said
on
it again.
I actually have a recording for that on the app. I'm not kidding. There's a stop saying and a stop cursing.
Nice. And then add like and then it's perfect for me. So where I want to go from here then, because we do have a little bit of time left, is dialing in the difference between self-love and self-worth. This has been a theme this week as I've interviewed. Typically I interview doctors, psychologists, and psychiatrists. I have interviewed a lot of advocates, and I call these people patients. And I know that can be stigmatizing to some people, but I'm a patient. Anyone working on their own mental health or advocating for others, I view as a patient, so to speak. And these advocates have really dialed in on the importance of self-love and self-worth, but those have been used interchangeably. You just use them in a very different way. What are the differences?
Well, I do agree that, again, self-worth and self-confidence could kind of fold into being components of self-love, but it's easier to break them out. So, for example, if someone were to look in the mirror and speak to themselves and say, Kyle, if you're looking at yourself in the mirror, Kyle, you are worthy of people showing you respect. Mm-hmm. That's a lot easier for most of the population to get to than, Kyle, I love you exactly as you are.
Oh yeah, for sure. I couldn't even say that to myself in the mirror without laughing. Yeah. Because it would be so uncomfortable to me to address myself in that compassionate of a way.
Exactly. So we take baby steps. So the self-worth piece around I'm worthy and deserving of asking for the amount of money I deserve to make it my job. I'm worthy and deserving of eating foods that nourish my body rather than something that depletes my energy. I am worthy and deserving of being in a relationship that's not abusive is an easier step for most and a great starting point than I love myself exactly as I am. I am inherently worthy and deserving of love because I exist, not because of what I do out in the world, not because of my bank account, not because of how I look, but because I exist, because I'm breathing air. I am worthy and deserving of love, and I am love, and I love myself. That's a lot. That sounds like hippie woo-woo nonsense to most people, and yet that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing.
Point.
If we really, really intrinsically absorb that as truth, there are no limbs. There are no limbs. There is no acting out. That's everything, but it takes a minute to get there.
Yeah, a few minutes for some of us. I will share I think it's a sad story, and it was something that happened very briefly to me when we were both living in LA. That's where Grace and I initially met. I was driving and I was thinking to myself, what if I had $15 million in the bank? How would I live differently? And it started with, well, of course, I would have someone who cooks all my meals and cleans my house, and I'd get my dog washed and my car washed and all these things. And then I thought, well, how would I treat myself differently? And I go, well, I would get a massage every day, or I would do this. And then I had this thought that is the sad part of the story. I thought I would probably take better care of my body. I would probably drink more water and less Diet Coke, because I want to live longer and more fully. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, by admitting that, I admit that right now I'm okay not living more fully or not trying to elongate my time here on this planet. What type of view do I have of myself where in this state I would not care for myself in the same way if I had this hypothetical onslaught of wealth? That was a devastating moment for me to be aware of, because it was a mirror of how I viewed at least a part of myself as not being worth the care, not being worth the commitment to treating myself with respect. And that includes what I put into my body, etc. That is a hard thing to live with, I think. And I think a lot of us are living with some version of that. We hurt ourselves in little tiny ways sometimes that I think that can be symptoms of a bigger issue with how we view ourselves.
Yeah.
I have no question, but I would love for you to respond.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I can't even begin to imagine the ripple effect that admission is going to have to everyone listening, because I know for sure it resonates with everyone who will hear this. So there's two ways of looking at self-sabotage. There's the example we used before where I want to go run a 5K, but instead I'm sitting on the couch watching Netflix. Self-sabotage because you want something, but you're doing something else. Then there's the view of self-sabotage where you're actively creating these micro punishments for yourself all day long. Yeah, because there's shame and there's guilt and there's a feeling of being a failure. And so the Kyle driving in his car that day goes, if I had $15 million, what that really exemplifies was that you had accomplished what Kyle that day felt like he was here to do, that he hadn't yet done. And there was this gaping hole of I'm nowhere near where I'm supposed to be, AKA I'm a failure, AKA I deserve to drink the aspartame inside Diet Coke. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you love yourself really, truly, completely, not as an ideology, but you genuinely, subconsciously love yourself as you are today, you would never put, poison in your body.
Right. So I know we have 5 minutes and I'm asking the biggest question, and granted, we've been answering this question throughout this video, but how do I get there, Grace? Like okay, so we're aware we don't love ourselves. That awareness is not enough. Where do we go so that I feel and see the improvement of self-love? How do I get there?
Yes. So I like to go with a few limbs first because it's the easiest thing. Like I said, that's what people are Googling. Most people are not Googling, how do I love myself more? It's becoming a bigger topic, which is great news. And I'm very excited about that upward trend. But for the most part, the vast majority of the world is saying, how do I stop biting my nails? And so we knock out a couple limbs because we feel a lot better when that happens. And then we quickly start to work on the trunk so that we're slowing the pace of anything new coming up. And then we go into some self-confidence, we go into some self-worth. And after a little bit of time, you're heading into self-love. So I always say, you know, there was a study found that 6 sessions of hypnotherapy results in an average of 93% improvement per topic. So if you can give yourself at least 12 sessions, you're going to be just starting the process of moving out of the limbs into the trunk. If you can give yourself 6 months of hypnotherapy, and I realize there is, you know, a financial barrier there, and not everybody can afford this, which is why we have the app, and which is why MedCircle has a free YouTube channel. And it's why I have a free YouTube channel. You can start with recordings. Absolutely. And just so you guys know, we do have a scholarship program at Grace-Based Hypnosis for marginalized folks to get hypnotherapy over Zoom. So that is available as well. But if you can give yourself 6 months of hypnotherapy, what's going to happen is you're going to knock out as many limbs as you could possibly want. You're going to make a huge dent in the trunk, and you're going to really start healing that piece of the root. Now, I'm not suggesting that in 6 months you can go from absolute subconscious self-loathing and self-destruction into magically loving every element of yourself. But if you were even 40% better, you'd live a completely different life. A completely different life from beginning to end.
And by no way am I also advocating that at sometimes we aren't going to just naturally feel down or bad or whatever. Life still happens. This is not like if you are not failing because you feel bad. You feel bad because we all feel bad sometimes. So that I want to be very clear with. Yeah.
And the subconscious view of what failure is not based in reality, right? Like Kyle's belief, subconscious belief that he had to have $15 million in the bank to be worthy and deserving of taking care of himself. That doesn't exist in truth and reality. But that was very real for his subconscious. And so, you know, I'm kind of using a third person because I know you've done so much work on yourself between then and now. It's a past Kyle. But that happens. And the other thing is you can do all the hypnotherapy in the world and it's still going to rain. Right? There's still going to be traffic. There's still pandemics. The world is still a challenging place to live. It's just that our reactions to the external challenges that always continue to occur become more in alignment with the person we want to be and less based on a default that is less than empowering.
Yeah. Y'all, I can't bring a better conversation than this to you. Grace, you delivered today to everybody. That was wonderful. Now, for those watching, do not be whoever you want. But my recommendation is do not be the person who sits there and go, that sounds nice. That was motivating. I like that. I got a couple takeaways. Put them into action. We are in Mental Health Month awareness. And if you've noticed, anything I put on social media only says Mental Health Month. Awareness is not enough. Awareness is just the first step. And the way we promote awareness sometimes makes it seem like if you're just aware, then you're done. We're not done. It is action. That is the word I want to, it should be Mental Health Action Month. It should not be Mental Health Awareness Month. And action you can take are going through this video and finding the things that resonate with you and then implementing those into your life. We're going to include all of the resources we mentioned in this video below the video, the app, the website. You don't have to do them all. You can try them all and then figure out which ones you like. The point is that don't let this video be a one-time thing in your life. Let this be a catalyst for the next step. And then let that next step be the catalyst for the next step. Continue on this journey. You're watching this live, so I know you're on it for yourself or somebody else. Don't let this be where you stop. We have tons of resources below this video. Check them all out. Check one of them out. Make that action point. You deserve that. Grace, final words before we wrap up.
Thank you. It's an honor. I love you, Kyle. Thank you to everyone for listening. And if you want to check out that 7-day free trial to our app, it's getgrace.com.
Love it. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. We release new videos and lots of live interviews, just like the ones you watched every single week. I'm Kyle.